Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. This is Michael Vass of MV Consulting Incorporated, and today I have the opportunity to speak with Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo. She represents the 126th District in New York, and we're very happy to have her here with us. Ms. Lupardo, thank you for taking the interview with us.
Nice to be here.
Now, I know before we got started, I noticed we have quite a few things in common, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Some of the viewers and voters out there may not be aware. You've traveled and lived in India.
I have. Yeah, it was part of my graduate studies when I moved to Binghamton in 1976. I studied here for 4 years, and part of my graduate studies put me at Oxford University, and then I spent a couple months in India. It was a very, very important period for me. I learned a lot, not only about world travel, but also about myself in the process.
Yeah. I know that for myself, when I was in Moscow and in the Soviet Union, I found that coming back, it just made me appreciate and love this country that much more. And I've said it many times, for all the problems, for all the issues, this is the best country I've ever seen, and I can say that because I've been somewhere else. Would you say that's a similar feeling for yourself?
Well, no question about it. You know, the experience for me was very profound in the sense that I saw people who are living under such incredibly difficult conditions that the effect it had on me was that I very rarely complain about the small stuff. You know, I take things in stride. I try to live a much less stress-free lifestyle.
I can understand. Absolutely. And I can concur with that as well. Yeah. It's been very much my experience as well. By the way, she's also a motorcycle lover, just like me. It's fantastic.
True enough. I wish I had time to ride anymore.
Oh, that and golf are two of my passions I wish I could get back into.
Can't hit the ball, but I do ride.
Yeah. Ms. Lupardo, I know we're tight on time, so let me get right into some of the questions we have.
Okay.
One of the first ones that I think is very important, especially as you're an incumbent. This is a very anti-incumbent environment right now. But I think it's important that people understand who they voted for. And when I say that, I mean, what do you believe is the most important piece of legislation that you voted on and or passed that voters may not be paying attention to or may not have realized?
That I voted on?
That either you voted on or that actually passed that you voted on.
Because actually when you first asked that question, given the environment that we've just been through and given the state budget crisis, honestly I first thought that the most important thing that I voted on was something I voted against.
Oh, okay.
Which was this last budget go-round, where it was stretched out over so many months and the budget was done in all of these extender bills, whereas so many really rotten things were mixed into the budgets, and I wound up voting against a majority of those. But when it came right down to it was the revenue bill that helped to fill in the budget gap was so detrimental to the southern tier that I was forced to vote no, because it included this clothing tax issue, and we had previously done the cigarette tax, which is sending business over the border. So this year, it was all about the no vote when it came to the way the budget was constructed. Of course, over the years, and certainly in the last year or two, I've passed some significant environmental bills, but I don't think the general public would see that as nearly as important as trying to get our state budget on track, given the collapse on Wall Street. The problem with New York State is we were so much more vulnerable than other states, because 20% of our income comes from Wall Street, and lack of regulation, lack of oversight, that coupled with the fact that our finances were pretty shaky to begin with due to some practices that I find very questionable. Borrowing money to pay basic bills, worrying about debt for another day. So we were already sort of skating on thin ice, and then when the bottom collapsed, honestly a lot of people didn't know how to cope with it. And so the federal government, so to speak, came to the rescue with stimulus money.
Yes.
And last year, we used that stimulus money to prevent even further cuts and further taxes, but it only filled a small gap in the problem. So yeah, environmental bills, I mean, I can name one if you'd like.
Sure.
Because I think you were driving at bills that I have authored myself and have passed myself. we sponsor a lot of our colleagues' bills.
Right.
Just this past August, the state has finally released new construction standards for state buildings. It was a standard that I requested that they design green building standards, so that all buildings going forward that use state money or substantial renovations must be done in a green way that saves money and also creates environments that people are more healthy working in. So, but I've done a lot of environmental work, and
it's a passion of yours.
Definitely, it is one of besides helping our local economy get back on track, my professional background is mental health, but one of my personal passions is environmental conservation, especially in light of what happened in Endicott with the trichloroethylene spill.
It's been devastating for the area.
Right.
A lot of property owners are still very angry about that, and I understand why.
It also is one of the things that makes our area even more sensitive to the issue of groundwater contamination, because we can see what happened during that, the era of manufacturing and IBM. I think people are probably more aware and more savvy on environmental contamination and toxic consequences.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that actually kind of falls into a question I was going to ask a little bit later. Because it's very topical now. Just 2 days ago, I was over in Pennsylvania at the Chesapeake gas drilling, one of their gas drilling rigs. And you have been to a...
I have.
Well, that's part of the question. You have been to some of the gas drilling rigs. Was it Chesapeake or one of the other companies?
Chesapeake.
Chesapeake's? Okay. So you saw the presentation and got a tour of their... Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, I have to.
Because I know you've stated before, and on your website it also states, that you are in favor of natural gas drilling as long as it is safe. And you've also stated that you had seen Gasland, the film Gasland, which is a quasi-documentary
I'm trying to
political
learn as much as I can by watching everything and reading everything that's out there on the subject.
Okay, because it doesn't state on your site that you had been in actually to see a gas drilling site, or I missed it.
No, I think we probably didn't mention that. But
okay.
We've done so many things that we didn't haven't mentioned all of it, but yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you then, based on, and there's just tons of information, no one can possibly know everything about that.
I can give you some.
Well, actually, if you're far more knowledgeable than I on this subject, can you fill in a little bit more about what your position is on that?
I can fill you in on what my position is at the moment, because it's all basically being directed by the process that we're in right now. I always want to make it clear to people that I serve on the Environmental Conservation Committee. I care about the environment, but I'm also on the committee. And the committee has some oversight over DEC. We are very much involved with hearings on their budget. We make decisions that affect that agency. So it's been very important for me to not get caught up taking a position, pro or con, while we're in the process of studying it. I will admit that when this topic came up a couple of years ago, I was one of the people who advocated to the governor that he create the current moratorium so that we could revise our regulations on gas drilling to accommodate the Marcellus, because it presents a whole unique set of circumstances given the sheer number of wells that we're talking about, the amount of water that would be used, the questions that were going on at the time about the chemicals, the wastewater treatment capacity, whether we had it, the amount of staffing, the training, whether we knew how to permit those adequately to pay for all the rest of these things, whether we needed to do an extraction tax. Lots of questions on the table. We also were learning about some problems out west. People in hospitals being exposed to workers coming in who had had chemicals spilled on them because no one knew what the chemicals were. So medical personnel were taken sick because of the lack of disclosure. And also we were hearing about some water contamination through methane migration. So I suggested to the governor, along with a few of my colleagues, that we take the time, redo our regs, and then the process began. 13,000 comments came back to the proposed regulations, and that prompted some scientific peer reviews that are going on right now. And I can say I'm happy we are doing this because if you look at what's going on in Pennsylvania, the only way you can describe that is policymaking in the reverse. Something has gone wrong, and then they go back and say, oh, we didn't have enough staffing. Oh, this is happening here. Maybe we ought to learn about the chemicals. So it's backwards as far as we're concerned here in New York. We want to get this thing right on the front end. And the economic potential is vast if we can not only get it right, solve some of the problems with casing integrity, wastewater treatment, staffing, and all the other things. Maybe we can proceed cautiously, carefully, but we're not going to roll it out like they've done in Pennsylvania and make a bunch of mistakes. So I hope we can get it right, but I'm honestly concerned. As a lifelong environmentalist, I'm on the fence.
Having been, and I admit that I'm not nearly as knowledgeable, but having done some research on it, looking at Chesapeake's, and I can only speak for Chesapeake. Are you aware? I was told they have a new thing, and I don't know if this factors in.
Closed loop?
The closed loop on their water recycling. It's a brand, or they mentioned that it was a new thing, that they're recycling the water. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, oh sure. We're going to probably require that. I would be shocked if we don't require that on all systems in New York. But the big takeaway point for me from Chesapeake is that not all gas companies are the same.
Sure.
They don't all have the same resources. And I'm convinced that by the time New York gets done setting its approach to natural gas drilling, that only companies like Chesapeake will even be able to afford to drill in New York.
Okay.
So I worry about some of these speculator companies coming in who
the smaller wildcatters,
don't have the resources. Exactly, because they're going to wind up having to flip it to these Chesapeakes who have the closed loop system, who have the connections to do on-site recycling, who have the high-quality seismic testing equipment to look for faults, to know perhaps the best way of going about this and meeting our guidelines. So that remains to be seen.
Okay. No, that's a fair...
That was my big takeaway.
That's a fair position, and that's a fair concern. And it's good to know that you're actually informed enough to make that decision and say, you know what? We know. Not everyone is. I have to say.
Well, that's why I preface my remarks by I'm on the committee that's overseeing this whole process. So that's why I take it extremely seriously. And it's also the reason why I'm not showing up at pro or anti-drilling rallies. I just don't think it's proper right now for someone involved at this level to be siding up this way. It's way too serious. Honestly, I don't think all the facts are in. Once we know, and we'll be in a better position to judge going forward. But keep in mind, also, we've got a new governor coming in.
True.
He may assign a new D.C. commissioner. Here we go. That
and
D.C.
everything
commissioner,
else changes everything.
That D.C. That's the one to watch. What the governor does with the new commissioner, and whether or not that person signals a preference one way or the other, or he may want to just scrap it all and start all over again. Who knows?
That's true. That's a good point.
We'll see. Wait and see.
It's a point that we definitely haven't, no one's really considered. No one's really talked about that. So that's a good point.
Yeah. It's politics.
Yeah.